Hi everyone, welcome back to yet another review with Psychcast. I'm Tony, and today we'll be diving into Unit 6, Developmental Psychology, which is all about how we develop throughout life and the psychology behind it. So a quick overview for all the students out there. I will be going over physical, cognitive, social development, and then passing it on to Vicky for moral development, sexual stages, gender, and methods of studying developmental psychology. So to start, starting off with physical development, which involves a bit of biology, it begins at conception, which is basically when the sperm make contact with the egg, creating a fertilized egg, or also known as a zygote. The zygote then goes through three stages, the first one being the germinal stage, which is when the zygote undergoes cell division, and this usually takes about 2 weeks, and then moving on to the embryonic stage, which is basically when the zygote forms organ, and this goes about for 2 weeks to 8 weeks. And lastly, the fetal stage is when sexual differentiation occurs and goes from 9 weeks to birth. Please note that during these stages, teratogens, or harmful environmental agents, like probably the most common one being alcohol, may affect fetal development. And speaking of that issue, the consumption of alcohol during the fetal stage can have many negative impacts. Some fetuses exposed to alcohol will develop fetal alcohol syndrome, which result in physical abnormalities and cognitive defects. Now, let's introduce the concept of maturation, which are a biological growth process that enables orderly change in behavior. Basically, it dictates how we progress. For instance, the baby might sit before they crawl before they stand, and stand before they walk. Speaking of growth processes, we must mention one of the landmarks of physical development, puberty. During puberty, we develop primary and secondary sex characteristics. Primary sex characteristics are the body structures such as ovaries, testes, that make sexual reproduction possible. Secondary sexual characteristics are the non-reproductive sexual characteristics, for instance, the breast, male voice quality, and body hair. Most people will peak physically in early adulthood and then experience a gradual decrease in physical abilities throughout life. This is especially apparent in elderlies, who often lose the effectiveness of their senses such as smell and are much weaker compared to their younger self. Next, let's discuss cognitive development, which is dominated by a psychologist called Jean Piaget. Piaget believed that the driving force behind cognitive development is the struggle to make sense of our experiences. To this, he proposed that the brain builds schemas, which is a general term for a concept or framework that organizes and interprets information. Additionally, to adjust our schemas, we can either assimilate new experiences or accommodate our schemas. To start, assimilation is basically when we interpret our new experiences in terms of existing schemas. On the other hand, accommodation is when we adapt our current understanding schemas to incorporate new information. An example of this is that when we have a simple schema for, say, for instance, a cow, we might assimilate a dog into this schema and call it a cow because it also has 4 legs. However, we can also accommodate our schemas to learn that a dog and a cow are different. Now, I will introduce the Piaget's cognitive developmental stages, which include sensory motor, pre-operational, concrete operational, and formal operational. Sensory motor stage begins from birth to 2 years old. This is basically when you experience the world through your senses and actions, with instance of looking, hearing, touching, basically all the senses. During this stage, there are 2 key phenomena. First is the lack of object permanence, which is the awareness that objects continue to exist even though they're not perceived. For instance, if I were to cover a toy with a blanket, a child with object permanence would know that the toy is still there, although it is covered underneath and can be seen. However, a child without object permanence would believe that the toys had disappeared. The second phenomenon is stranger anxiety, which is the fear of strangers that infants commonly display. Next, pre-operational stage begins from 2 years old to around 6 or 7. During this stage, you begin to represent things with words and images and use intuition rather than logical reasoning. A phenomenon during this stage is called egocentrism, which is basically a child's difficulty taking another's point of view. For instance, a child with egocentrism may show their mother a picture, but the picture is facing their own eyes and not the mother's. Concrete operational stage begins from 7 years old to 11 years old. You begin to think logically about concrete events, grasp concrete analogies, and perform arithmetical operations. Key phenomena include the comprehension of conservation, which is when properties like mass, volume, and number remains the same despite the changes in the form of the object. For example, imagine that there are two glasses of milk with the same volume, and one glass is poured into the other one that is taller and skinnier, making it look like there's more milk in the new glass. A child with conservation would conclude that the two glasses are actually the same, despite the new glass appearing to contain more milk with its shape. The last stage is formal operational stage, which stems from 12 years old to adulthood. In this stage, you develop abstract reasoning, abstract logic, and the potential for mature moral reasoning. Moving on to social development, let's first talk about the different type of attachment. So attachment can be divided into 4 types: secure, avoidant, ambivalent, and disorganized. Secure attachment is basically when the child is happy in the presence of the primary caretaker and will become distressed when they leave, but can be consoled again when they return. Avoidant attachment is when the child is inhibited or reserved in the presence of the caretaker, or may even avoid them, and may pretend to be not distressed when they leave. Ambivalent attachment is when the child may have a quote-unquote stormy relationship with the caretaker, becoming distressed when they leave, and is difficult to calm down after they return. They are often wary of strangers. Lastly, disorganized attachment is when the child has an unstable relationship with the caretaker and other adults. This attachment style is commonly seen in cases of severe neglect or abuse. Next are the 3 types of parenting styles. You have authoritarian, authoritative, and permissive. And just a side note, please help yourself in any shape or form to differentiate between authoritarian and authoritative, as they can be really confusing with each other being that similar. So authoritarian is exactly what the name suggests. It's basically when parents have very high expectations for their child to comply with rules without questions. Examples of these styles are corporal punishments, like spanking for disobedience. In short, authoritarian parents want their child to do as they say without any questions. Children of these parents are socially withdrawn, lack decision-making skills, and lack curiosity. On the other hand, authoritative parents also expect obedience to rules, but will explain the rules and encourage independence. These parents set limits and give out punishments and forgiveness. Children of these parents have high self-esteem and are independent and articulate. Last is permissive, which is when the parents have few expectations and are warm and not demanding. This may sound positive, but really what this is saying is that the parents allow their children to do whatever they want. Therefore, children are rarely punished, and a key word is that parents will often consider themselves friends of the child rather than parents. Children with permissive parents are not good at accepting responsibility, controlling impulses, or being generous in social relationships. Now, we will move on to Erikson stages, named after psychologist Erik Erikson, which describe the stages of psychosocial development. The first stage of this development is trust versus mistrust. This stage occurs during the first year of life, and it's when infants decide whether the world is friendly or hostile, depending on whether they can trust that their basic needs, like food, water, and shelter, can be met. Success at this stage results in trust and hopefulness, while failure at this stage results in doubt and distrust. The second stage is autonomy versus shame and doubt. This stage occurs between age 1 to 3, and it is when the child must develop a sense of control over bodily functions and their environment. A key example would be potty training a child so they feel a sense of control over their body. Success at this stage results in mastery of toilet training, walking, and other skills related to controlling oneself. The third stage is initiative versus guilt. This stage occurs between age 3 to 6, and it's when children must take initiative and learn to assert themselves in social situations without overstepping their boundaries. Success at this stage results in the development of a sense of purpose, while failure at this stage will result in guilt when they are not successful at taking initiative or overstepped. The fourth stage is industry versus inferiority. This stage occurs between 6 and 12, and it occurs when a child is now in school and getting feedback for their work, for instance, like homework. Therefore, they must gain a sense of accomplishment and pride in their work. Success at this stage produces a sense of competence. The fifth stage is identity versus role confusion. This stage occurs during adolescents' search for their identity. They may question the type of person they are and begin to develop their own values at this stage. Success at this stage will result in fidelity, which is trustfulness to one's self. The sixth stage is intimacy versus isolation. This stage occurs during early adulthood when we attempt to form loving and lasting relationships. Success at this stage results in one learning how to love in a mature, giving way, while failure at this stage results in a feeling of isolation and lack of intimacy. The seventh stage is generativity versus stagnation. This stage occurs during middle adulthood and is when we evaluate our contribution to the society. Being productive in contributing to society is called generativity. During this stage, we will often try to leave our mark on the world. Failure in this stage, however, can result in feelings of stagnation or isolation. The last stage is integrity versus despair. This stage occurs during old age when we assess our life and what we accomplished throughout our life. Success at this stage results in wisdom, whereas failure at this stage results in bitterness and despair.
Hey guys, it's me again. Sorry you guys couldn't escape me, but I'll take it from here from Tony. So moving on to moral development, which was advanced by Lawrence Kohlberg with Kohlberg's level theories. There are 3 stages of morality, each stage composing 2 systems, so you have basically 6 levels of morality in total. Starting with stage 1, which is pre-conventional morality. The first system of this stage is called avoiding punishment, which means your morality is based on avoiding punishment and receiving rewards. For example, in this stage, you will follow a rule out of the fear of being punished. System 2 is called aiming for rewards. As the name suggests, your morale will shift to work for your own interests, and you make judgments by evaluating the benefits it will bring to you. Stage 2 is called conventional morality, which is when you internalize society's rules and morals. The first system of this stage is called good boy, good girl attitude. At this system, you're trying to live up to what others, especially authority figures, expect from you. You understand that the rules set by society are important, and you try to conform to these rules. The second system is called loyalty to law and order. This is when you obey rules and feel moral and social obligations. The last stage is called post-conventional morality. This is when you believe that societal rules are still important, but an internal set of values has developed that may conflict with societal values. The first system of this stage is called justice and the spirit of the law. This is characterized by a belief in individual rights, such as liberty and life, and social contracts. The second system of this stage is called the universal principles of ethics. This is when you believe universal principles, which are universal rules of morality that may agree or disagree with the rules of society, outweigh societal rules and you act accordingly. Moving on to a super fun topic, psychosexual developments. And just for your information, this is probably not going to be tested on the AP exam, but it probably will be tested in your AP psychology class. So I recommend that you still listen to this section. So psychosexual development, again, involves Freud. Freud says that the 5 psychosexual stages are oral, anal, phallic, latency, and genital. Starting with oral stage, which is from birth to 2. This is when the primary source of pleasure for infants come from sucking and using their voice to cry out their concerns. People who become fixated at this stage may become addicted to gum, tobacco, and alcohol, or become verbally abusive. The next stage is the anal stage, which starts from 2 to 3, and it's when toddlers are learning to be potty trained. People who develop fixations during this stage may have issues with control or the lack of control. Next is the phallic stage from 3 to 6. Children during this stage realize that they are boys or girls and apparently take the opposite sex parent as an ideal for future partner choices. People who develop fixations during this stage may become very picky with their partner choices, only selecting those similar to their parents. After the phallic stage comes the latency stage, which is from 6 to 12. During this stage, children are mainly focused on gender identification, so boys will associate with boys and girls will associate with girls. Those who develop fixations in this stage primarily socialize with their own gender as adults. The last stage is the genital stage, which is exactly what it sounds like. It is from 12 to death and is when the genital region becomes the primary source of sexual pleasure. Now let's briefly go over gender. Again, I don't remember this topic ever showing up on the AP exam, but I know that some AP psychology classes might test on this concept, so here it is. Some important concepts about gender include gender roles, which is our expectations about the way men and women should behave. Additionally, gender identity is our sense of being male or female, and gender typing is the acquisition of a traditional masculine or feminine role. Finally, we come to our last topic, methods of studying developmental psychology. The two main methods for studying developmental psychology are cross-sectional study and longitudinal study. Cross-sectional studies are methods of comparing groups of people of various ages on similar tasks. For instance, a cross-sectional study may administer cognitive tasks to a group of 2-year-olds, 4-year-olds, and 6-year-olds, then subsequently compare their results. Next, longitudinal studies involve the study of a small group of people over a long period of their life. An example could be the study of the physical development, height, bone density, etc. of a small group of people over their lifetime. So that's it for this unit review on Unit 6 Developmental Psychology. We hope you found this helpful, and I'd like to announce that we have our visual episodes on YouTube, and Psychcast is also available on all podcasting platforms. If you're watching the visual, please subscribe and like this video if you found it useful. Comment down below what unit review you would like us to do next. Additionally, if you are listening to the audio version, please give us a review so we can learn how to improve our content for you guys. Last but not least, we are on Instagram, so follow us on Psychcast on Instagram. That's it from us, and we hope y'all tune in to our next episode. See you guys.